I work with Dave as a part of the YMCA team with the Georgia Tennis Grant. I am very honored to say congratulations to Dave on this Lifetime Achievement Award of his going into the Hall of Fame. However, I've known Dave for about 25 years, and I am more honored to tell you about the person, the family man, the humanitarian that Dave is. I have never known him to say no. He treats everybody, kids, adults, treats them equally well. And that is the part that I'll always remember when Dave Mathews' name comes up, is the humanitarian family man that I see. So again, Dave, this is a great honor. I know you've worked very hard all your life, and congratulations again on going into the Hall of Fame. Dave and I work together with the YMCA on the Georgia Tennis Grant. We've been doing that for a number of years, probably about 10 years. And until Dave got involved in, say, the last 8 years, we have really taken off because of his expertise. We deal with probably 1,000 or more kids in a summer. The program is a summer program, and we deal with 1,000 or more kids in the summer. So over the lifetime of our work relationship, I think we've probably touched at least 9,000 to 10,000 young people in trying to teach them and get them excited about the basic fundamentals of tennis. Dave also had an idea of how to continue that program past the summer into the winter time and the school time, and try to do some programs inside of the gymnasium with a tennis net, the Nerf balls set up, and try to keep the kids involved from one summer to the other. He's also worked with the YMCA's after school program. Again, we have really seen a level of success since Dave has been involved with our program, and we really appreciate him working with us. And it's been an honor for me to work with him. Thank you.
Easy as that.
Yeah, that should be pretty easy, because most of the time everybody thinks I like to hear myself talk, so you would think that that would come off pretty easy. First time I ever met the guy, I was playing in the national over 30 clay courts, and he was playing, and he and his partner were seated, and I'd never heard of him. And he lived in, and it showed his address as Atlanta, and I said, how can a guy who's be seated, who's my age, me not know who he is? Well, I proceeded to watch this guy serving, and he's just bouncing serves over fences and stuff. And he's got this monster serve, and he's this big, tall guy. He looks like he's a giant. And I'm watching him play, and I'm going, this guy's really good for somebody nobody's ever heard of. And so we're going, so I'm watching, and finally, and then at the same time, we had just started this tennis tournament called the Atlanta Senior Invitational, which this will all be a part of. And my job was to recruit all the players for the 30 and over division. So, I marked down, and I'm going to find out who David Mathews is and all this kind of stuff. And next thing you know, I'm going through this list, and I find out he's won the national 30 grass courts. And, he's won a whole bunch of national doubles. And I'm going, who is this guy? So I'll go up and introduce myself, right? And we got to talk over the next, 6 months. We talked a few times and things like that. And, sure enough, we draw each other first round. He kills me in this tournament. And but we got to be friendly, and I come to find out he had played at Phoenix City Junior College. You ever heard of a good tennis player that came out of Phoenix City? I've never heard of a good tennis player that's come out of Phoenix City Junior College. And so sure enough, here's David shows up, and he's bashing guys. And I said, David, then we get to talk, we go to a tournament, we start talking about who we're going to play next. And David likes to call, I think he likes to call everybody Bubba, but I know he likes to call me Bubba. And you get this deep voice from way over there, hey, Bubba, what's going on? And and you don't have to look around to see who it is. But so we're talking about some guy, and I'm seeing he's playing this guy who was a great college player and a great junior tennis player, and maybe now we're 35 or something like that. And he looks at me, he raises that eyebrow and gives me that kind of look like that, and he says, Eben, that guy updated his resume recently? Because in other words, that guy might have been good 15 years ago, but let's see what he's bringing to the table today. And that David was never intimidated by anybody like that. Matter of fact, the better the resume, the better David Mathews likes playing a guy. Because because he's beaten everybody at some point now. And so from, age 30 to age 40, he was the best player kind of in our age group. And we've got a great group of guys that are around our age. But it did, and then and he should have been invited to play on a bunch of these international teams and things like that. But, David, day in, day out, would show up. We went on a number of intersectional trips together with Paul Groth, and David and Paul would be these two big serving guys, and they'd come and if we played some guys on the clay courts, they were in trouble because the serves would bounce over their heads. If we played guys on the hard courts, they were blasting these serves, and Paul was hitting the lefty thing, and he's got David at the net, and there's just no way you're ever going to break serve. And so those two guys made a great team and have made a great team for a long time. But to see David come from where he came as a young guy growing up and having a chip on his shoulder to some degree, I think, because he didn't have all the success that a lot of these guys had, and maybe that's kind of what fueled some of his success on the tennis court, because he ended up better than any of them, which was pretty cool. So that was kind of one whole category of stuff, and hopefully that'll work. And if it doesn't, I can try it again. But another one, which I don't want it to sound too self-serving because I'm the chairman of the Georgia Tennis Foundation. But what David has done for the Georgia Tennis Foundation's YMCA program is nothing short of miraculous. He, when we started, Nell Long, our executive director, got with David because David's wife worked at the Decatur DeKalb Y. And they got together, and David started, and she the three of them kind of figured out how to work their way through the Y system, along with what's Scott's name? This is an edit. Not Scott Winters, Scott Dahl. And so along with Scott Dahl, they got together and they started at the Carl Sanders Y. Then they went over to Eastlake, and Eastlake is the famous story about David. And if you're out in the audience, if you're listening to this, you may not know it, but literally the Eastlake YMCA tennis courts were covered in weeds. And David, who lives kind of not far from Stone Mountain, went over there one day with his kids, and I'm going to guess his daughters were probably at the time 8 and 10, something like that. And when they got to it in their pictures, when they got there, the weeds were taller than his kids were. And he got the whole family out there with a sickle and a blade, and they hacked it all off. And there are, the whole, and it's pretty indicative of how the whole Y program has worked its way through, and maybe even a bit symbolic in the sense of David cut down the weeds to make a spot for these kids, and now, 10 years later, 10,000 kids have gone through this program. But without Dave Mathews and without David's involvement, not just there, but in helping all of the pros and recruiting all the pros to do this at all the YMCAs throughout Atlanta, we would not have a Y program that, like I say, through over 10 years has now had 10,000 kids go through it. So David deserves an unbelievable amount of credit for that. Another great Dave Mathews story to me has nothing to do with his tennis accomplishments, and it has nothing to do with what he's done for the Y program, but it's in fact who he is and what he's all about. David is a very good friend of mine, and it's interesting when he and Janice had the girls, he started cutting back on his competitive tennis. And he's cut way back on it now, and the girls are now, I'm going to guess, 16 and 18 or 16 and 19, something like that. So they're just about out of high school, and hopefully we'll get him back out. But for the last 15 years, David has really concentrated, to my knowledge, on two different things. One, being a good dad, and two, his academy. And his academy, and I may not characterize it exactly right, but David's academy, the kids that come to David's academy don't come to David's academy just to learn how to play tennis. David teaches life lessons. He teaches those kids how to handle themselves in conversations, depending on what age he gets them and what their background is. He teaches them how to talk to adults. He teaches them how to manners. He teaches them right from wrong. And David has, if you know David, he's got a very strong sense of right and wrong. But he cares for these kids. They're not a number to him. They are income to some degree, but what happens with them is way more important to him than however much money he might make by helping them succeed at tennis or get a college scholarship or whatever the goal for that family may be. But I'm telling you that David is one of the really good guys in tennis.
It was 20-some years ago when I first met David Mathews. I invited him down to our tennis benefit down in Camilla. I knew David was a terrific tennis player. He was probably in the 35s then. He was ranked probably 1, 2, 3 in the nation in singles as well in doubles. And I imagine he won a lot of doubles tournaments with Paul Groth. David was serving the ball, he told me at that point, about 140 miles an hour. And in Camilla, we don't see a lot of 140 mile an hour serves. So I knew David was a terrific tennis player. A few years ago, David beat Mark Vines up here in the Atlanta Seniors. Mark has been to my event as well, and Mark would have been ranked 60-some in the world when he was on the tour. So that's on clay courts, and David beat Mark in the finals up here at Atlanta Seniors. David is one fine tennis player. Another nice little thing that David did for us in Camilla is one year I invited him, and he was playing for the United States of America, the Doubler Cup. And he had been in South Africa playing for the United States, and when he flew back in from South Africa, he landed at Atlanta, got in his car, and drove all the way to Camilla to play our event. That's the kind of person David is, and that's probably the first reason I invited David to Camilla. He's just one nice person, and that's what we like at our event. Other than looking at David and you see this gentle giant, he's got that lopsided grin, so you know he's up to no good all the time. He's got a great sense of humor. But what Nan and I like so much about David is his passion for his family. There's no one more important than his wife Janice, and of course his 2 daughters, Nikki and Sarah. The last time he was in Camilla, frankly, that's all he talked about. He didn't talk about his tennis. He talked about Sarah's volleyball and how well she was doing. As I said, David's tennis ability is great, and I like to have that in my event. But honestly, his people skills are even better. And in my event, Camilla's a town of 5,000, and everyone turns out. And so David knows everyone in our county. And we have during our event not only the pro tennis, but we also have clinics. And I started a clinic about 25, 30 years ago for what we used to call the mentally retarded. I think is mentally and physically challenged today. And all the clients come out. We have 100 clients at our service center, and they come out and take a tennis clinic. And people like David and Horace, Reed, and Armistead, and Neely, all the guys are just fabulous. I can see David right now, that big old man out there having the best time, and the clients just eating it up. They are so excited. And of course, they're more interested in hitting the ball and not hitting it over the net, but hitting over the fence. They think that's delightful, and of course, David encourages it. David is great with people. They also have a children's clinic and a ladies' clinic. And I can't think of anyone that I've ever had at our event who is any better with people. David is one terrific person. Nan and I could not be any happier for him. He certainly deserves to be in the Georgia Tennis Hall of Fame, and congratulations, David Mathews.
What's up, big dog? I just want to say thank you for all the hard work you've done over the years. Many years ago, I just want to say thanks for just helping me develop a work ethic and determination and belief in myself that I could push past the limits that I thought I had, whether that was grinding around Stone Mountain on bikes early Saturday mornings, or hover relays, or those nasty time circuits where some of the newer kids would sometimes lose their lunch. It really helped me just to further be successful in life. And I also want to say thanks for the help you've given me. I used to say working in between my ears and just focus on the mental game of tennis. And I'll never forget, right before the close, we watched The Legend of Bagger Vance and just talked about the inner game and how that really helped me to bring my game to new levels. So I want to say thanks and congratulations into getting into the Georgia Tennis Hall of Fame, and I wish you many more years of teaching life through tennis.
Well, I'm thrilled to be able to speak at this. I think it's, Dave Mathews is as deserving as anybody has been for an award like this, and I'm glad that he's being recognized for the things that he's done. I think if I were to try to describe Dave, he's absolutely a teacher. He's a phenomenal tennis coach. He's a great player. He's competitive as anybody you'll ever meet. There's a fire that burns inside of him that I've tried to capture at times in my life to be successful. I think more than anything, Dave is a molder of young people. And, I'll always remember the times when I was growing up that he was, that mentor to me and that kind of role model that I looked up to. And, I think as I've gone throughout my career, there's been elements of Dave Mathews and the things that he's taught me over time that have come out and hopefully molded me into the person that I am today.
Basically, his philosophy is teaching life through tennis. Hard work, dedication, practicing a lot really makes you a better player. Hitting as many balls as possible. He's from that old school that if you put in your time, that you will reap from those benefits.
You've obviously seen the students come back. I mean, they're not playing tennis maybe anymore. They're living their own lives. How gratifying is that for you and him to see these kids now as adults and parents themselves?
The neat thing is with Facebook and all the technology, he actually keeps in touch with all of his students. They live all over the country, some live out of the country, but he still connects with his students, and it's a really neat thing to see that he's in contact with them even though they're away.
Now, when you got the news and he told you, what was your reaction to find out that he'd been nominated to be in the Georgia Tennis Hall of Fame?
Deep down inside, I knew that he would eventually be in the Hall of Fame, so it was exciting to hear that he finally got into the Tennis Hall of Fame.
What did, tennis, athletics, you said you had 2 daughters that play, one plays tennis, one plays volleyball. Just talk about, that kind of athletic mindset, and how his tennis career kind of impacted the rest of the family into athletics. Yourself, you play volleyball. Just kind of talk about how important, tennis is to your family.
Well, of course, in his life, tennis was huge. And of course, that overlaps into my girls. Even when they were babies, we had rackets for them as they grew up, infants into preschoolers. We used balloons, working on eye-hand coordination. So it was kind of fun and exciting to see if they would even play tennis. And now I do have a daughter that plays tennis, and she plays tournament tennis, and also I have a daughter that plays volleyball, competitive volleyball, and Dave also helps in her life also.
What has it been like? I'm trying to think of another question. I think you actually did very well. I'm just trying to get one more thing, just to have it. Trying to think of something else to cover. How about just talk about maybe again, just kind of going back to being in the Hall of Fame and how neat it is to see all of his hard work. You know how hard he works, but it's nice to see that other people know how hard he works and how much he means to the game of tennis.
Being in the Hall of Fame is something that's meaningful, that other people recognize his hard work, and both on and off the court, and his playing ability. The neat thing about the Hall of Fame that he was inducted is we've gotten to travel all over the world. We've been to Germany and to South Africa, and my daughters have been able to share that experience. So tennis has kind of circled around and given us a wide range of, I don't know, travel experiences that we'd never have an opportunity to do.
Okay, and we're rolling right now. If you just want to just go ahead and start talking and kind of work through it.
All right. I'm Paul Groth, and it's a great honor to be asked by David to say something in his honor on this momentous occasion for him to be inducted in the Georgia Tennis Hall of Fame. He's certainly somebody I believe is well deserving of this honor. I've known David for a number of years, and he's just one of those unique individuals that is so worthy of this sort of award. David is, I've been his doubles partner for a number of years now, maybe, I don't know, 15 years or so, and he's just an incredible professional. He's a hard-working guy. He never gives up on the tennis court. I'm sure his students benefit greatly from him being their coach. I do want to say that being David's doubles partner, and it does carry somewhat of a burden, though, and that is that if you happen to lose and being his partner, you're going to be walking around the grounds of the tournament figuring that everybody's looking at you like, well, that's the reason that David Mathews is out of the doubles bracket. So it's a great pressure, one that unfortunately I've dealt with just a couple of times. But anyway, I have a story to tell about David, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling it. It dates back to late 70s, early 80s, and it's when I played at the University of Georgia under Dan McGill, and David, who I believe he went to Columbus College on a basketball scholarship. We often joked that both of us were not really we were not junior players really. We didn't really play the junior tour as it was. In those days, we played sort of the Parks and Recreation tournaments, which were really low level, and played other sports. So we just did that, and tennis was just a summertime thing. And so David would always say, he always use this line, he says, "I ain't country club, I'm blue collar." So that always stuck with me. And so back to this, back in the old days, late 70s, early 80s, it's the tournament of the year for the various small colleges and universities called the Georgia Intercollegiates. And being a Georgia player, it was just another weekend of having to play a bunch of matches, and most likely it turned into another round of challenge matches for us from quarters or semis on. But for these other colleges, it was a very big deal. And Coach McGill would not let us forget that. He would give us speeches telling us, how spoiled we were, and how we had the finest of this and that. New shoes every other match, new rackets, new gut strings. We're always well fed. And these players coming from these small colleges now, he would tell us they are hungry. They would love nothing better than to get a win against a Fat Cat Georgia boy on their belt. So he would say, you just better watch out and you better play your best, or you're going to end up in embarrassment. So I remember before my first round match, I'm walking up the steps of, or the front walkway of Henry S. Field Stadium. And again, this is just a great day for these small colleges to get to play on the hallowed grounds of Henry S. Field Stadium. And so I'm walking, you see all these players walk around in their warm-up jerseys, and I walk up the front sidewalk, and there's a little pavilion there right in front of Court 1, and I see a guy sort of nervously looking around, a real tall guy. And he had on a Columbus College warm-up jacket. And he's sort of nervously looking around right by the trash can, like as if he's wanting to make sure nobody's watching him. And so I just sort of stepped back and I watched him. And when it looked like everybody had cleared out, this big fella reached in, bent over the trash can, and he looked like he was rummaging through it. And I immediately started thinking to myself, God, Coach McGill, he's right. But not only are they hungry, these guys are starving. He's rummaging through the trash can. I'm thinking to myself, well, should I give him a couple dollars to run down to Crystal, get him something to eat? So I just never forgot that. And so it lends credence to what Coach McGill always told us about how spoiled we were and how hard these fellows had it at these other schools. But so anyway, years later, Dave and I are playing tournament or something, and afterwards we start talking about how things were at UGA, which I was sort of embarrassed to tell him about what we had, and he starts telling about how tough he had it. So I start thinking, oh no, I mean, I hope he doesn't, I don't know if I should tell him, that I saw him, getting his lunch out of our garbage can. And he starts talking about how he was standing around the garbage can, and I'm thinking, oh no, he's going to tell him about this story, and I'm just starting to get embarrassed for him. So I said, David, I watched you, and I just felt bad. And because you obviously didn't have anything to eat. And he goes, man, I wasn't getting something to eat out of the trash can. What happened was I was watching your doubles partner, Brent Crimes, get his racket strung, put a brand new set of gut in it. Brent taps it one time. It says it's a pound too loose, and he tosses it in the trash can. So heck, I waited until everybody was gone, and I pulled the racket out because I was going to get those gut strings out of that racket. He finally had some gut strings put in his racket. I said, David, I'm relieved to tell you that I'm glad you were not looking for food. And he laughed, and he said, like he always said, he goes, but remember, I ain't country club, I'm blue collar. But David, congratulations, you deserve this. And when you get well, we'll be out there making our comeback. So have a good evening.